All right, everybody, what's going on? And welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk, the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. C. Wells coming at you. And man, we are continuing to preview week one. Man, it's been a jam-packed week. Recording this on Thursday. So the games that are taking place tonight obviously haven't taken place yet. So we're not going to talk about any recaps until Sunday. I wanted to break this up because there's like 11 games this week, and that's like one hell of a long show. So I didn't want to do it that way. So we still have like 7 games on the schedule for Saturday. So it's a jam-packed day on Saturday. And so we're going to talk about them. Like I said, there's FBS games, there's FCS games. So we're going to talk about all the FBS matchups first, and then we'll make our way through. So with that being said, man, y'all hit the socials. Instagram is SWAC Talk, Facebook is SWAC Talk, Twitter SWAC Talk 76. There's still time to get in on the pick'em contest. Obviously, if you don't put in picks for the Thursday games, then you miss out on that. But you can still make picks for the rest of the games. Link will be in the description, and there's also a pinned tweet on my Twitter account, again, SWAC Talk 76. Winner gets a championship belt at the end of the season. The player with the most points gets a championship belt at the end of the season. So keep playing and keep tuned in for that. And we're gonna have us a good time. Like the video, comment your thoughts, and share the video, and subscribe to the channel. We crossed over 1,300 subs, so thank y'all very much. And goal is 1,500 now, so we're gonna go step by step, 15, then 2,000, and then on and on. So we're going to continue to do what we do. Hit that notification bell, too, to be alerted. We're going to be doing our first HBCU Top 10 next week. And then, we'll have our Week 2 preview coming at you on Wednesday. And then our Week 2 recap will be next Sunday. So we're going to have, a jam-packed week for the rest of the week. Like I said, we got a video coming on Sunday recapping these games and talk about the Orange Blossom Classic. And we'll have an Orange Blossom Classic recap on Monday. So it's a lot of stuff going on, so keep it locked in. Make sure you hit that notification bell to be alerted to all of it when it drops. So let's go ahead and jump into the action. We're going to start things off with Bethune-Cookman at University of South Florida. That's a 5 p.m. Central Time kickoff in Tampa, Florida. The Bulls had a pretty solid season last year. They were one of a team who was kind of a surprise to some people. I think they really had a solid run. They won 7 games and won the bowl game 45-0. There is something behind that 7 wins. They didn't beat anybody with a winning record. So how good is this team? That remains to be seen, but this is still going to be a tough task for Bethune-Cookman. The Bulls, they have a really exciting offense. They scored over 415 points last season, the most since 2017. They have a balanced attack. They can run, they can throw. Byron Brown is their quarterback. He ran for over 800 yards last season, and with 11 touchdowns, and he threw for almost 3,300 yards and 26 touchdowns. They have some solid receivers there. They're gonna they have Sean Atkins, who caught 92 passes last season. They got a Purdue transfer coming in, Rahman Abdul Yassin. So they have a solid receiving core. The running game is going to be solid as well. Brown is the guy who leads the way, but Naquan Wright is going to also be back. He ran for almost 800 yards and 8 touchdowns last season. And then Teron Keith, who is a kick returner and an all-purpose guy, he's back. He threw for he played at Bowling Green, and he's adding more experience to this USF team. Most of the O-line returns as well. So offensively, this team is going to be solid. Like I said, they were a team who kind of surprised last season, and I think they're going to continue to develop there. The defense last season, they were kind of up and down. They allowed 31 points 5 or more times last season. but when they were able to keep games in check, the offense typically took care of the things. They outscored teams more than they shut them down last season. But they do have a lot of experience back. Um, they got some solid guys out the portal as well. So the secondary had some bad moments last season, but they came up with the big plays when they needed to, and it should be the strength of this team. Morris Brown and Tevin Ward are the corners. They getting help from Deshaun Rucker, who transferred from Tennessee, and Brent Austin, who came from James Madison. Youngstown transferred DeMarco Augustine is also gonna help out at the safety spot. So they really hit the portal hard. They didn't really get great pass rush in terms of sacks last season, but they did finish seventh in the nation at seven and a half tackles for loss. So they do get penetration, but they just weren't really great with pass rushing. And that's the area that you expect to see this team kind of improve on. They do have a solid edge rushing tandem of DJ Harris and Tremel Logan. They can be disruptive, but they have to kind of be better all around as a unit. The key to this team is run defense. They have to be able to stop the run. I think in this game here, I think Bethune-Cookman is going to look to run the ball. I don't really know where Bethune-Cookman is going to attack. I don't know how their attack is going to be this season. So they should look to run the ball, try to establish that, and then work play action off of that. Quarterback has been a situation of competition. So where the Wildcats go with that, that's what that's kind of where we remain to be seen. The defense from Bethune-Cookman will be tested in this game. I think the key to them is to limit as many big plays as they can and get off the field when they can. See if they can force a couple of turnovers and make USF uncomfortable. If you can get them at least in some long yardage situations and some third and longs, who knows what might happen. But you have to be able to kind of keep them. You have to kind of be able to keep them off balance and off schedule. So to me, the key to Bethune-Cookman in this game is to be able to control the clock. Run the ball. Make timely passes. Convert your third downs, and that's something this team didn't do last year. So yeah, you're kind of asking them to do something that they didn't do. But this is a new season. They brought in a lot of guys at the portal. They kind of had a better infusion of talent. So this is a game where you're gonna kind of see some things from them, but I think really for Bethune-Cookman, next week's game against Mercer is probably going to be a game where you can really tell more about this team. Other than that, like I said, I think USF wins this game. It might be tight early, if Bethune-Cookman can kind of set the tone. Maybe they can hit a big play in the return game. Maybe they can, hit a big play on offense, maybe get an early turnover or something. But I think it's going to be one of those games where, they're going to be fighting from behind for a good chunk. Like I said, because I don't really have a lot of early confidence in Bethune-Cookman offense, I'm going to go, I'm going to go 42-7. I think USF might jump out early and then kind of coast a little bit after that because they play Alabama next week, so they're probably gonna want to kind of get some momentum and rhythm, but they're not gonna want to kind of bang themselves up before they go to Tuscaloosa. So that this is not a bad place to play this game because like I said, they're probably looking a little bit ahead at Alabama, but I don't think they're looking ahead far enough that they won't be focused on this game, being that is the first game. So I do think that USF is going to control this game. And I think Bethune-Cookman can hopefully put up a bit of a fight and make some things happen there. And just be competitive. Like I said, these games, really, you just want to be competitive. Just, you don't want to fold early. That to me, that's the thing. You don't want to get in your own way. You don't want to, and this goes for every team that plays the FBS game. You don't want to fold early. You don't want to put yourself in, bad situations, bad down and distance. You don't want to give them anything easy. You want to make them work for everything that they get, regardless of how the rest of the game goes. So I think in that way, I think Bethune Cookman, if they can kind of establish themselves some kind of way, establish an identity offensively in this game that can bleed through the rest of the season, I think that's the key to them for me, is just to kind of develop and grow after this game. That takes us to our next game on the docket, and that's Grambling at UL Lafayette. Raging Cajuns. They take on Grambling at 7 p.m. Central Time in Lafayette. ULL is a team that they are a team that wants to run the football. They've been that way for a long time, and they continue to be that way. They won 6 games last season. They haven't really had that great season that they've had in a while. They won like 34 games under Billy Napier before he left to go to Florida. So they've kind of slid a little bit, but the Sun Belt has gotten better in that time too. So I don't know if it's more the league caught up to them more than they dropped off. But they were a team who played 6 bowl teams last year out of the Sun Belt, so they were challenged. But I think they're going to continue to be a thorn in people's side because they want to run the ball. They're a team who's not going to be scared to run the ball. They're going to look to do that, and they've been that way for a long time, and I don't think it's going to change. The offense got better last season after kind of a inconsistent 2022 season. They weren't as explosive as they were under Billy Napier, but the ground game was still solid and made for a balanced attack. Most of the production starts with a veteran line, which wasn't bad at keeping defenses out of the backfield. AJ Gilly is one of the best offensive linemen on that team, and he helps anchor that right side. I mean, he's the left guard, but the right side of the line is pretty solid as well. Chandler Fields is a guy at quarterback who, a lot of people are looking to take charge of that job, but they have a 3-man battle for that job. Ben Woolridge, who split time with Fields last year, and a JUCO transfer, Samari Collier, who also be in the mix. But Fields is probably the better passer out of the bunch. Woodridge is the better runner out of the group, but they don't have that Zion Chris type of guy to run the ball. That they don't have that at quarterback anymore. So they probably won't run the quarterback as much as they did in previous years because quarterback was a weapon running the ball. Levi Lewis also back in a few years ago was a guy who was dangerous with his legs. So they don't really have that dimension to their offense this season, but they still are dangerous running the ball. They have a solid receiving combo of Jacob Bernard and Robert Williams. The offense does spread the ball around. They had 7 guys who caught at least 17 passes, and that includes the tight end. So they spread the ball around. They don't necessarily have that one guy who is going to catch 55, 60 passes, and then everybody else is at like 20. They're going to be pretty balanced all game. They look to spread it around, and they really just look to kind of keep the run game going because that's what they do. Draylon Washington is probably the guy to look at running back. Also, Zylan Perry and Elijah Davis are also young backs in that rotation. So you're gonna have to account for those guys. You're gonna have to kind of make sure where they're going with the ball because they're not gonna do a lot of disguising a lot of things. They want you to know they're coming at you, and they're not gonna hide. They're not gonna hide that they're coming at you. So you just have to be prepared for them to throw it at you. To throw it at you in terms of the run game. You just gotta kind of be. You just gotta kind of be ready for whatever comes your way because they're not going to shy away from any physicality. They're not a team who is going to be soft, so they're going to really test you. But the defense had a rough time last season. They allowed more than 300 points for the first time since 2018, and they weren't able to get third down stops. That's always going to be a key to any team. If you can't stop people on third down, you're going to struggle a lot. They did have a great pass rush, but they didn't really get a lot of tackles for loss in terms of in the run game. Cameron Whitfield is back after leading the team with 8 sacks on the season. Jordan Lawson also has 7 sacks. The interior line has good size. Mason Narcisse is a 290-pounder on the D line, playing nose tackle. And Fitzgerald West, who transferred from LSU, is also beginning the mix in the D line. Leading tackler Casey Osai made 95 stops in middle linebacker, but the rest of the linebackers are gonna have to kind of pick up the slack. Kendra Gant, they lost a guy like Kendra Gant who went to Houston. So that leaves a hole in the linebacking core. They do have 3 starters back in the secondary. Keon Martin is the best corner of the group. Tyrone Lewis is the top safety. He was the best tackler with 74 stops. Um, Cortland Flowers is a corner safety type of guy. He can play either one. He's gonna be a safety more this season. Clark and Skipper return after they both tied Lewis with 3 picks on the season. And like I said, the key to this team is just running the ball. Like I said, when it's running, when it's working, they're gonna go with it, and then they're gonna want to pass off of that. Um, and when it works, they win. So the key to this game is if you want to keep yourself in this game, you got to stop them running the ball, and that's gonna be something that is gonna be a challenge for Grambling defensively. With a lot of new guys on defense. This team was 6-0 when they ran for over 200 yards or more, and they were 0-7 when they ran for less than 200 yards. So the key to them is keeping them under 200 yards. If you keep them under 200 yards, you got a chance. But they're gonna look to run, and that you got to kind of account for that. But I do think I do think Grambling, they have an opportunity to come in and make some noise. Um, The offense, you look like they're gonna have a solid running game. They got Hargrove coming from Memphis. They just added Trey Bradford from LSU, so they have some talent there. They also have some young guys at receiver that can step up and make plays, and they have a veteran quarterback in Miles Crawley and an O line who got more experience over the last couple of years. So offensively, I think Grambling should be okay. I think Coach Dooley, in his first game back at Grambling, I think he's going to try to, make the most of the strengths of this team, and and use that run game, because I think Grambling's run game is going to be really good this season. With the type of guys that they have, the type of guys that they brought in, and that can only help your passing game. To me, the defense is going to be the biggest question. Last season, Grambling's defense didn't really play well against the run consistently. So, you're losing your top guys. So that to me is a problem in a game like this against a team that wants to run the ball and is not scared to run the ball. So to me, honestly, I think Grambling, the key to this game is just like the Bethune-Cookman game. Just come out, play loose, play fast, play discipline, and just give it a go. See where you stand after a quarter and a half. Maybe some things happen. The weather could be an issue. I know it's been raining off and on this last couple of days this week. I don't know what the weather's gonna be like on Saturday, but you need to take advantage of any opportunity that you have. So I do think that if Grambling's gonna make any kind of headway, they're gonna have to do it with their defense and slow this team down. You're not gonna stop them, but if you can slow them down and again put them in third and longs and make them have to throw, they do have an uncertain quarterback situation. Nobody's really heads or tails above everybody else. So maybe if you can kind of put some pressure on them in that aspect, that will force some issue. Everybody who comes in and plays, it may not be up to par. So you want to kind of just make them uncomfortable, and however you need to do that. I think that's what you really, I think that's really your prime objective. The next game that we have is Alabama A&M taking on the Auburn Tigers. That game is at 6:30 in Auburn. Again, another tough matchup. This is P4 team, a SEC team. Auburn's had their troubles the last couple of years. Hugh Freeze is having a kind of rough go at Auburn. I think he may be on a hot seat. Um, they do have opportunity to get better because last season it was not pretty for them. Um, they almost beat Alabama. It took a miracle play for them to do that, but other than that, there was not a lot there. Um, they lost to New Mexico State last season. They lost to Maryland in the Music City Bowl, so they lost to teams that they probably should not have lost to. Um, they went 6-4 um, with 4 losses. Then they had, the wheels came off at the end, but they have a lot of new faces on defense, and offensively they need to be a lot better. This team isn't, they're not what they used to be, and I don't think they're gonna get there. They've been in a 4-year tailspin, and I don't know if they're gonna get themselves out of it. The passing game should be the most dangerous factor on the offense. The kicking game is among the best of the nation, and the defense has the right people in charge. And maybe they get better, but their offense is up tempo. They play a tempo offense, but they weren't that great. They averaged 357 yards a game and only 26 points per game. And they were not good on third downs, and they didn't really protect well. The pace of their offense and the inability to move the ball kill the time of possession, because when you play fast and you don't move the ball, you're always going to have your defense on the field more, and you're going to wear them down. So they did bring in Tyrone Nix from Ole Miss to be the offensive coordinator. So they're going to see if they can get some things going. They do have a new guy in charge at quarterback, Peyton Thorne, who played at Michigan State. He's taken over. He was second on the team in rushing, and he was a solid guy from Michigan State. He had a pretty solid season last year. Didn't have the best passing numbers like he did when he played at Michigan State, but this is his job, and he's probably not in any danger of losing it. They do have a new receiving core. They brought in Cam Coleman, who is a freshman who's gonna be great high potential guy. They're looking for a lot of great things out of him. Robert Lewis is from Georgia State. He's a quick guy that can make some plays. Penn State transfer Keandre Lambert Smith is also a guy who can be a solid veteran for them in the pass game. They do have a solid tight end who came in from FIU, Rivaldo Fairweather. He led that team with 38 catches for 394 yards and 6 touchdowns. So that's a weapon that you're definitely going to have to account for. The offensive line has experience. They did not play well, but they do have the experience. So you kind of feel like if you're looking at any position group to get better, is that one, because offensive line needs that continuity, and having those guys back, they may be able to gel and get better. They do have a good back, Jarquez Hunter. He had 3 straight 100-yard games, and he could be 1,000-yard rusher this season. So they have him, and Damari Austin is also a solid guy behind him. He ran for 320 yards last season, averaged 5 yards per carry. Defensively, they have new staff. DJ Durkin, who was the coach at Maryland a few years ago, he takes over running the defense. He's gonna have to kind of shore this group up. They need to be more disruptive. The key to them is the interior line that lost their key guys. They lost their big fire plug in the middle and their top rusher. They do get a guy from Texas, Trill Carter, and Gage Keys from Kansas. They could be solid. It helped this defense. They weren't great at their respective stops, but they could come together and help the unit get better. Jalen McLeod, who came from Appalachian State, was Auburn's second leading sack guy last season. He should have more production. Keldrick Falk has a lot of upside. He's a young guy. He has a lot of upside to him, and you're looking for him to kind of develop and take that next step. The linebackers, they could be a solid unit. Eugene Asante was the star with 86 tackles and 5 sacks. He also had eight and a half tackles for loss. He's a solid outside linebacker. Austin Keys is back in the middle. He missed a good chunk of last season, but he's back now. And the transfer portal and recruiting class adds depth to this group. So they're young in certain spots, and they're gonna need some bodies to fill. The secondary has new corners, and they're gonna have to step up. They lost two really good, they lost two really great corners, but they do have talent there. Keontae Scott was fourth on the team with 44 tackles as a safety, but he's now gonna be one corner. And sophomore Kalen Lee is going to take the other side and looking to have a breakout season. Jaron Thompson, who transferred from Texas, should take over one safety spot after having 176 tackles and 5 picks in 4 seasons at Texas. The other spots are kind of up in the air. They're going to be kind of helmed by inexperienced guys, so that leads to some question marks there. The offense did allow 17 to get more than 170 passing yards. They went 0-7 in those games. They gave up 14 passing touchdowns in those losses and only 5 passing touchdowns in their wins. So their offense, their defense has to be better against the pass. And for A&M, they have a solid receiving core. And they seem to have Cornelius Brown at quarterback. So, I think, he may be able to test them a little bit. But depth in a game like this, especially, against the SEC team, no matter what, they're going to have numbers out the yazoo. So Auburn may not start off great, but I think numbers-wise, I think they're going to wear down the A&M defense. So I just want to see a solid game plan. I want to see good execution, and I want to see a team who is hungry. A&M is really fighting from behind this season. I think to a lot of people outside the program, Coach Manham may be on a hot seat. So it's not necessarily, you're looking at this game, if they lose this game, all heck gonna break loose. But I do think that they need to have good showings, and your first game is always your most important game. So if you can kind of make some things happen, that should put you in a pretty good spot. That's really, that's kind of really where I stand right now with this team. So I think this will probably be a game that Auburn crosses 50 points, because they're gonna keep plugging away at it until they get there. If A&M can, put a few touchdowns on the board and make this thing competitive, that would be great. This would be a good game for Donovan Eaglin to shine. And those skill guys, just kind of go out there and give it a go and see what happens. Other than that, there's not really a lot to be said for that game. So like I said, I think the Tigers win that game pretty comfortably. That takes us to our first FCS matchup of the day, and that's Valley going to Nashville to take on Tennessee State. That's a 5 p.m. kickoff. Tennessee State is a team who kind of, they don't really know where they are. They were picked fourth in the Big South OVC preseason poll. This is Eddie George's 4th season. Draylen Ellis is back at quarterback. He has over 6,500 career yards passing and 59 total touchdowns, 47 on the ground, 47 through the air, 12 on the ground. They also return the redshirt sophomore running back Jordan Gant, who was named to the HBCU National Player of the Year watch list this season. He ran for over 530 yards and 10 touchdowns last season. Defensively, Eric George, who is the son of Eddie George, he returns after being named 2003 OVC co-defensive freshman of the year. He played in 9 games as a true freshman with 25 tackles, 6 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. I think this is a team that really is, I think they're looking for a lot of, they're looking for that consistency. They had a pretty good season for the most part. Before the end of the year, the wheels kind of fell off. and they started to lose a few games. But they brought in some transfers like like most people have. Um, Jaleel Dean from Tennessee Tech, who's a wide receiver. Keandre Booker, who's a linebacker from Southeast Missouri. C.J. Evans from Austin P. He's a running back. J.T. Jackson from Georgia State, defensive back. Tyler Jones from Missouri, defensive back. Connor Meadows from Tennessee, offensive lineman. Marvin Atusasi from Morgan State, offensive lineman. Aiden Smith from Bryant, he's a wide receiver. And Kieron Smith from Georgia Southern, he's a defensive lineman. So you can see they have they went skill heavy, really. At least the key guys are mostly skill guys with couple offensive linemen uh, sprawled in there and a couple of defensive players. But they're looking to kind of get that offense back up to par. The offense was 103rd, 113 in the nation in yards per play. So not a lot of production from that offense. Defensively, they were really good at 24th in yards per play allowed. So their defense was solid. The offense just didn't really have a lot there. They do have four all conference guys coming back. Um, James Lowry, who was a first team punter, first team kicker. Jordan Gant, second team running back. Jackson Foster, second team punter, and Eric George, he was the freshman of the year on the D line. Tennessee State, they finished with a winning record for the first time since 2017 last year. They took another step forward under Eddie George over the past 2 seasons. They've been in position to win the conference, entering the final weeks of October, but they failed to capitalize, especially last season. Inconsistency on offense has really hurt them from reaching their potential the last 2 years. They do have a new offensive coordinator, Travis Partridge. He looks to kind of step up this offense. They ranked seventh in total offense in the Big South OVC last year. Draylon Ellis is back for his third year at Tennessee State. If he can find some success like he had at Austin P, which he's been up and down in that aspect, that could help this team get a lot better. He's been battling injuries a lot in his career. He played in 6 games last season, had 1,075 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 252 on the ground with 5 touchdowns. So if he can stay on the field, that's a added weapon for them. They do have guys that can make some things happen. Like I said, Jordan Gant is back at the rushing for 553 yards. C.J. Evans is a guy who has over 1,300 career yards in his time at Austin P. So that's a nice weapon for their offense. They do return 3 receivers who have starting experience. Daron Johnson had 349 yards receiving. Karate Benson and Delaney Majors. I love that name, Karate. They also returned after combining for 426 yards and 3 touchdowns. Former Tennessee Tech wide receiver Jalal Dean is a guy to watch after having a career high 323 yards last season. The O-line is the question mark, but they did bring in a lot of new faces. They added 6 transfers to the O-line room, so they're looking to really find that consistency there. That's going to be the big question mark for their offense. The defense has been one of the best in the country in the last few seasons, and they led the OVC in total defense 2 years ago. They were third in total defense last season. They have some guys coming back. Fondren Hollis the third and Lathune Snipes are the only 2 starters returning. So they have 9 new starters on defense. They added 8 defensive transfers, but they do have a lot of guys back who played. So they're gonna have, this defense is gonna be basically brand new, and that's gonna be, one of the situations there's going to be one of the situations where they got to kind of find their footing. One familiar face for Valley is Jalen Bell. He transferred from Valley to Tennessee State. He didn't play last year because of injury, but he looks to be ready to go. He was an all-conference guy in his time at Valley. So that's a guy on the D line who can really help things if he's ready to go. They took some big losses in the secondary, so they're gonna have to kind of fill those in. I do think this is a game for them that's gonna be it's going to be an interesting game. Valley, I'm eager to see where they are in Coach Wade's second year. Um, they do have, um, Tijarian Williams at quarterback. The Fabian Fant is a nice guy, with speed in the backfield. Uh, Ross at wide receiver and Jackson Davis at tight end are all weapons for this offense. Can the O line protect? That's the key for Valley. And defensively, they're gonna be, Valley's always salty on defense. They last season their defense was actually not that bad. So if their defense can continue to take steps and the offense can avoid, the sophomore slump from a young quarterback, I think this team could be a team that puts some thorns in people's sides. I think this game is going to be a little bit tough for them out the gate. I think Tennessee State is looking to get off to a good start, and I think they're gonna win this game. But I think Valley's gonna fight in this game. I think Valley's gonna get this game everything they have, and I think Tennessee State wins this game. I'm gonna say Valley loses this game 28-14. I think it's going to be one of those games that might be, tight going into half, might even be tight into the third. And I think Tennessee State will probably pull away late. But I like Valley. I think Valley is going to improve this season. I don't know how much that's going to improve with their wins and losses, but I think this will be a better team than where they were in previous seasons. So I think they're going to give Tennessee State a good fight here. The next game we have is Southern at McNeese. That's a 7 p.m. kickoff. McNeese is a team. They played one game already. They lost to Tarleton State on a missed field goal. They fell behind 26-7, and they were able to kind of get themselves back in the game. And they had a very up and down. They had a very up and down first game. They had some big plays. And they had some bad plays. They did turn the ball over 4 times in that game. And, the defense looked like they were gonna get ran out of the stadium, but they were able to kind of right the ship and ultimately lose 26-23. This is a brand new team. They have over 50 plus transfers. So they're still trying to find that identity. Clifton McDowell is a solid quarterback for them. Definitely gives them a nice weapon there. They have some nice running backs, and they have some playmakers at wide receiver. Defensively, they look like they're getting better. This team can only go up from where they were last year, where they went 1-10. With their only win was a forfeit, so they can only continue to go up from here. In that game against Tarleton State, they finished with 200 yards rushing, 245 yards passing. They had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 445 yards of offense. They averaged 4.3 yards per carry and 6.7 yards per play on offense. They did fumble 4 times and lost 3. They did have 1 interception. They did not force any turnovers. So they had 4 turnovers and no takeaways. That's going to hurt you all the time. They had 8 penalties for 64 yards. Compared to Tarleton State, who had 1 for 13. They did do a good job on Tarleton State defensively, holding the Texans to 329 yards and 4.9 yards per play. They gave up 144 yards through the air, 1 touchdown. They gave up 195 on the ground and 1 touchdown. Third downs, McNeese was 3 of 11 and 2 of 2 on fourth downs. Tarleton State was 4 of 14 and 1 of 1 on fourth downs. McNeese 2 for 2 in the red zone. They did have 3 sacks as a defense. So they played, minus those turnovers, they played a pretty solid game. McDowell was 14 of 20 for 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked twice. He led the team with 67 yards on the ground. Jashawn Barbie had 58 yards. He did have some fumble problems. D'Angelo Durham finished with 48 yards and a touchdown. A guy I was surprised that didn't get more touches was Trevante Citizen. He only had 2 carries on the night. I expect him to kind of put the ball in his hands a little bit more, especially if that top back is gonna fumble the ball a lot. Matthew McAllister had 1 catch for 80 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Levi had a 43-yard touchdown reception. So they had a couple explosive pass plays. They didn't have a explosive running game, even though they ran the ball for 200 yards. The longest run on the night was 18 yards. So they didn't necessarily wow anybody with their big plays on the ground. They had two huge pass plays that helped them both with touchdowns. Other than that, Jermichael Carter had 4 catches to lead the team. They spread the ball around in this game, and I expect them to kind of continue to do that as McDowell gets more comfortable with his guys. Michael Davey, who is on pace to become the all-time leading tackler in FCS. He finished with 14 tackles. He averaged 15 and a half tackles per game last season, so he was right on par. Um, Thomas Miles had 8 tackles as well. Miles also had 1 tackle for loss. AJ Thomas had 2. Thomas also had a sack, and Macy Lewis had a sack. And like I said, they didn't have any turnovers. They missed. They were 1 for 2 on field goals. They missed the game time field goal. They had a field goal in the third quarter. Not much on returns. So like I said, there's still a lot to be figured out about McNeese. That wasn't a horrible game. Like I said, they shot themselves in the foot a couple of times, but they were able to get back in the game. But they ultimately still couldn't get over the hump. I don't really know. With so many new guys, this team is going to be a team that's probably up and down week to week. You kind of have to take it game by game because you just don't know how they're going to do until they start to really gel. Southern, a lot of new faces on the offensive line. Noah Biden is taking over at quarterback. The defense should be pretty solid. The D line, they're looking to go 10 deep. The linebacking core has added some depth. The secondary is probably, if you're looking for a question mark on Southern defense, it's probably the secondary. They have some new spots to fill. Rodney Johnson is the only returning starter in the secondary, so that's probably a place of emphasis. I do like Southern special teams unit. The kicking game is going to be good with Josh Griffin. They do have a new punter, so that's going to be interesting. The return game has the ability to make some plays, but they haven't really broke that big one yet. This could be that game. I think for Southern, the key is to establish the run, which means establishing your offensive line, and kind of play keep away a little bit with McNeese. And you cannot turn the ball over. Turnovers have killed Southern in their last 2 matchups with McNeese. That's going to hurt you all the time against this team. They've shown that they could hit big plays down the field. They really didn't have a great game just driving the ball. So if you can make them, inch by inch down the field, that could give you a chance to get some stops, but you have to capitalize. And this offense for Southern only averaged like 20 points a game last season. So it's imperative that they score points in this game because you're not going to win this game with 20 points. So you have to score in this game, and you're going to have to get those key stops to keep McNeese at bay. But like I said, it's just first game. It's a lot of questions for me. I'm a little concerned with a couple of things. I think this will be a close game. I like McNeese 27-24. I think it's going to come down to a late score. I think both teams are going to go out and they're going to go at it. It's going to be an emotional game. It should be a great crowd. So I think it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere. I think both teams are going to be ready to go. And unfortunately, I think McNeese is going to pull it out late. And that takes us to our next game, which is FAMU hosting South Carolina State. This is a 5 p.m. Eastern time kick, so 4 o'clock Central time. Rattlers coming off of a victory over Norfolk 24-23. South Carolina State comes into this game with a new head coach in Chennis Berry. After 22 years of Coach Buddy, they have new blood leading the team. They have a new quarterback in Eric Phoenix, who played for Chennis Berry at Benedict. He was a guy who I was really high on as a quarterback. I think he can be a difference maker for this team. they're gonna want to run the football. That's what Chinnisberry does. That's what South Carolina State does. So you can expect them to run the ball, um, and make things a little bit more physical for FAMU. Make this another physical type matchup. Justin Brown Smith is their leading receiver. He had 22 catches for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he gives that's a good target um, for Eric Phoenix. And like I said, the run game should be solid as well. Um, Offensive line, they are nearly intact, so that's a key for them. Um, can they, can they just take that step that they didn't take last season? This team had a lot of really talented guys last season that just couldn't really get over the hump. Can they do it this season? It's gonna be a tough battle. FAMU got a game under their belt. They got that bad game out of the way. Norfolk was able to hit them early, but they rebounded well and got themselves back on track. I think it's gonna be another game where they get pushed, but I think they can hold their own. Um, I do think, seeing Norfolk first and then seeing South Carolina State help them with their run game and being physical on defense, um, and not having to really worry about getting scorched through the air. I think that helps you defensively. Playing at home is definitely going to help the Rattlers. They've been tremendous at home the last few years, so that's definitely an added advantage for them. The offense is is going to improve as they continue to gel and mold and play together. I would like to see the run game kind of produce a little bit more, but I thought they did what they needed to do when they needed to do it, and which was kind of what they were last season. That didn't change much. And so I do think FAMU wins this game. Again, I think it's going to be another game that's a barn burner. I like FAMU with a score of 30-20. I do think South Carolina State with new blood and just being reinvigorated, I think they're going to come in with some fire. And I think they're going to, I think they're going to make things a little uncomfortable early. And that can kind of change the trajectory of a game. But FAMU has shown that they can take punches. And I think they can take punches in this game and get themselves back where they need to be. And that takes us to our final game of the day, which is our only SWAC matchup, which is the Labor Day Classic. That's a 6 p.m. kickoff in Prairie View. Panthers and Tigers. Prairie View is looking to establish themselves as the front runner in the SWAC West. TSU, new coach, new staff. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of mystery behind the Tigers. So this is kind of like one of those situations where your guess is as good as mine with TSU. I think they may have a new quarterback in KJ Cooper. They maybe Jay Young is still the guy. I don't know. They do have some talent at wide receiver. They have some great individual pieces on defense. They're looking to establish a new run game. Losing Owens and Howard, so they do have talent. TSU has talent, but they didn't have much depth last season, and so I think that's going to be a concern this season. Prairie View, Lucas Coley is the starting quarterback now. He has some great receivers in Shamar Savage and Trajan Spiller. The running game, I want to see that get established. CJ Presley on the defensive line is going to be a factor. And I think playing at home obviously helps Prairie View, and having a 9-game winning streak, that also kind of helps you. But the unknown of TSU is what kind of has me not knowing which way to go with this game. I mean, the spread is only 7. And to me, that's kind of odd because nobody knows what TSU is, and Prairie View, at least, is a team who's top 2 in the West. They should be more than 7 points better than TSU, especially at home. So I kind of look for some trickery and stuff early in the game from TSU. And then, where this goes after the game settles in, I think Prairie View, rights the ship. I think TSU kind of kind of hangs in there, and the rivalry factor kind of gets them going. But I think the Panthers win this game. I think they win this game 31-17. I do think TSU gets a couple early scores because I think they're gonna just go balls to the wall early, and then when the who you really are starts to come out, that's when things are kind of settled down. So I think PV wins this game, and and makes it 10 in a row and 1-0 in conference. We do have one game on Sunday. I'm going to recap that game on Sunday. I'm going to preview that game on Sunday when I do my recap of the Thursday and Saturday games, and that's the Orange Blossom Classic, Alabama State against North Carolina Central. There's a lot to talk about with that game, so we're going to dedicate a lot of time to that game on Sunday, and then that'll do it. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC, C. Wells, signing out, and I'm going to catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.